I am 78 years old, and I have been lying to myself for most of my life. Not the kind of lying that hurts other people, the quiet kind, the kind you don't even notice because it sounds reasonable, the kind that lets you sleep at night while your life slowly empties itself of everything that actually matters. I am sitting in a small apartment now, 2 rooms, a kitchen I barely use, photographs on the walls that nobody looks at except me, and I have more time than I know what to do with. Time I once begged for, time I said I would use for all the things I was too busy for. And now that I finally have it, I understand something I wish I had understood 45 years ago. The hard truth is this: I always thought I was building a life, but I was really just building a schedule. And by the time I realized the difference, most of the people I wanted to share that life with were already gone. Let me go back. When I was 25, I married a man named Daniel. He was calm, he smiled easily. He had a quiet way of making even ordinary days feel warm. We met at a summer charity event. I almost didn't go. Even then I had work to catch up on. But a friend insisted and I agreed. He was standing near the drinks table, telling a story to a small group of people. I remember noticing how attentive his eyes were. I loved him, and I meant it when I said I would spend my life with him. But I don't think I understood what that promise actually required. I thought marriage was about showing up in form, about being faithful, about working hard and building something. And yes, it is about those things. But there is something else I didn't understand until much later. Marriage is about being present, not just physically, but truly there. And that is where I failed. We had children, 2 sons, first Alex, then 4 years later, Nicholas. Like many young mothers, I wanted to give them everything: a stable home, good education, a sense of security. I told myself a good mother provides, that sacrifice is love, that the hours I worked were for them. I worked in finance, nothing glamorous, long days, constant pressure, endless deadlines. I was good at it, too good. I was promoted, then promoted again, and somewhere along the way I stopped noticing what I was trading for every step up. At first it was small things: a school performance I missed, a weekend spent at the office instead of outside together. I told myself it was temporary, that later I would be more present, but later never came. There was always another report, another quarter, another reason to stay late. I remember one evening clearly. Alex was about 8 years old. He ran up to me with something he had made at school, proud and smiling. I looked at it for a few seconds and said, "That's nice," and walked past him to check my phone. He put it on a shelf himself. I found that piece years later while going through old boxes, and I cried. Not because of paper and glue, but because I couldn't remember what it felt like to be the kind of mother who stopped, who knelt down, who really looked. My children grew up at the edges of my attention. I wasn't cruel. I showed up for birthdays. I cooked when I could. I told them I loved them, and I meant it. But I wasn't there in the way they needed. Daniel was. He took them to practice. He sat with them when they were scared. He knew their friends, their fears, their habits. He did the quiet, invisible work of presence while I was busy being important somewhere else. I would come home and he would tell me small things. Nicholas fell off his bike today. Alex argued with a friend. I would nod. say something polite, and go to my study. I didn't ask questions. I thought knowing was enough. Daniel never criticized me directly, but sometimes I caught his expression, not angry, just sad, as if he was watching me miss something I would never get back. I told myself I was doing it for the family, and maybe part of me believed that. But the truth is, I liked being needed at work. It was measurable, controlled, predictable. Home wasn't, so I kept choosing control. When Nicholas was 17, he got into some trouble. Nothing serious. Skipping school, pushing boundaries. Daniel handled most of it. When I tried to step in, he looked at me and said, "You don't get to show up now and pretend you care." I was angry. I told him everything I did was for him. He said, "I didn't ask for sacrifice. I wanted you here." I didn't know what to say. We never talked about it again. I learned later that the conversations you avoid don't disappear. They turn into distance. When my mother became ill, I visited once, stayed a few days, then left because of an important project. I told myself I would come back soon. She died 1 month later. I was on a work call when my brother called. I saw his name and didn't answer. I never really said goodbye. My sons grew up and moved away, one to Portland, the other to Minneapolis. Their calls became less frequent. Our conversations stayed on the surface. I gave them many things, but I didn't give them myself. Daniel retired before I did. He was 60 years old. He had a life outside of work. I didn't. I worked 4 more years because I didn't know who I was without a title. When I finally stopped, we were already strangers in the same house. He tried, suggested trips, dinners, but there was a quiet space between us that had grown for years. He died 3 years ago, quietly, in his sleep. I lay beside him, holding his hand, thinking of all the times I chose later. There is a kind of grief that doesn't scream, it just stays. My sons came for the funeral, stayed briefly, then returned to their lives. I don't blame them. Now I live alone. I eat at the same table, watch the same birds outside my window, read the books I once saved for later, and I've learned this. Time without people is empty. What gives time meaning is who you share it with. If you're watching this, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm not teaching. I'm just sharing what I learned too late. If you're putting something off because you think there will be more time, there might not be. If you think you'll be more present later, later comes faster than you expect. If there's someone you love and you haven't really told them, not in a rush, not on your way out the door, but truly looking them in the eyes that may matter more than anything else on your list today. People don't wait forever. Love without presence becomes memory. And memory is not enough. If this spoke to something inside you, leave a thought in the comments.